Hello, and welcome to Under 1000. My name's Thomas Flower, and each episode I'll read you a new piece of flash fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading Looping Lives. Please be aware that this episode deals with themes of death, so if that's likely to upset you or anyone that you're listening with, then you might want to skip this one. Are we going again then? He rolled his eyes and asked in as warm a tone as he could muster, "Do you really need to ask?" And then they jumped in, just like they had done so many times already, and were reborn. It was funny. Most people, when faced with the choice, would opt for the simplicity of the afterlife. The general consensus was that after the struggle of mortality, the ease and simplicity of a world where all your needs were taken care of was all that anyone really wanted. But there was another option, one which only a few brave, reckless, or determined souls would take. And strangely, it was the choice they had always made, countless times now. They could barely even remember what had happened the first time. All they each recalled was that there had been an accident of some kind, and that they had both arrived at the gates at the same time. And they had been given the speech they had heard so many times now, but which back then came as a shocking revelation. A speech which told them that they now faced a choice, either to leave this world and join another, or to go back and do it all over again. They had both known what they wanted to do. There was no disagreement between them. They had turned in a strange unison, opened the right-hand gate, and jumped straight back into the lives they had only just left. That was the thing, after all. It wasn't as though they were getting brand new lives in brand new bodies. Venturing back to the realm of mortals was something different to the reincarnation that so many on Earth imagined it to be. It was more like rewinding the tape, undoing what had come before. One's death would feed back into one's birth, a chance not to live out another life, but to live out your own life again. This, of course, was why the option was seen as so undesirable by so many. It was often commented upon in the celestial communities that existed in the afterlife that it was the choice taken only by those poor, tortured souls who could not give up on the past, and who were so stuck in their former lives that they were unable to move on. But this was not the case for them. The first time they went back, they did so only to try and live out fuller, happier lives. They were both sure that if they avoided the accident that had ended things for them both, they might have many more glorious days ahead of them. And in that repeat, they were correct. They managed to avoid the disaster which had led them to the afterlife in the first place, by imparting subconscious knowledge about each other and about the date in question onto their new selves. That, after all, is the gift repeaters are given. They are allowed to bury, somewhere far, far in the backs of the minds of their next selves, a little knowledge of all the attempts which have come before. But the first time wasn't enough. Although they had both still sought each other out, and lived full, happy lives to a ripe old age, they were still keen to go back and do it all over again. Perhaps it was a shared sense of romance, the vision of their love for one another repeating on and on eternally. Perhaps a desire to correct some mistakes and to perfect and master their lives individually and together. It is unclear to anyone else, and, at this stage, even to them. But regardless, they went back and kept going back, and back. The afterlife held no interest to them. they had an infinite number of attempts at life to make. Of course, they weren't always able to arrive at the gates together. Sometimes they would, though often this unity was tinged with a sadness about whatever terrible fate had befallen them. But more often, one would arrive and have to wait for the other. It must have been boring, faced with only 2 gates and a disembodied guide to while away the years. Whether this was a further indication of romance or foolhardiness is a judgment others could make. They seemed quite uninterested. But every time, they would be sure to leave together, so that they might meet up again in the mortal realm. There are those in the afterlife who say it's all some strange project, an attempt to finally create perfect lives together. They claim the two are using their knowledge in an attempt to work towards blemish-free existences, where nothing ever goes wrong. They say that perhaps when this is finally achieved, the pair will ascend together and finally enter the afterlife. Whether there's any truth to the speculation is unknowable. After all, many others claim that not even the couple themselves know what they're doing or why anymore. Are we going again then? He rolled his eyes and asked, in as warm a tone as he could muster, "Do you really need to ask?" And then they jumped in, just like they had done so many times already, and were reborn, just like before, just like every other time. 2 crying babies emerging at 2 different times, ready to meet again and take one more shot at life. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook, or check out the website at under1000pod.com. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song, and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, NICTATE, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.